We understand how much of a concern this is to farmers right across Western Canada and the entire industry. So I would like to emphasize that Canada will continue to navigate the challenging period with China through careful, deliberate, and strategic engagement.
Tens of thousands of canola farmers feeling squeezed by China's ban on their product are getting some of the help they've been asking for. Today, the federal government announced it will increase the level of cash made available for affected farmers to borrow, and that cash will be easier to access. The changes are being made to what's called the Advance Payments Program. Before, farmers could borrow up to $400,000 a year. Now they can borrow up to $1 million. Farmers pay back that advance once their product is sold. And what's more of the loan will be interest-free, $500,000 of it. The feds also announced they will seek new markets for Canadian canola through a trade mission this summer. Canada is the world's biggest canola producer. 43,000 farmers grow it, but the industry actually generates 250,000 jobs. Last year, Canada exported $5 billion worth of canola, and nearly half of that went to China. The remainder goes to just a handful of countries. China blocked Canadian canola shipments last month from two of Canada's biggest exporters. It insists the ban is due to contamination in the product, but in this country, it's widely believed to be retaliation for Canada's arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou back in December. So what happens next between the two countries? Gordon Holden is a former Canadian diplomat to China. He's now the director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta. Professor Holden joins us from Edmonton via FaceTime. Hi, Professor. Nice to see you again. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much, Fashi.
Do you think the measures, the boost to basically the amount of money able to loan canola farmers, as well as a trade mission to Japan and South Korea, do you think they go far enough?
Well, it's hard to know with certainty. The reality is it will certainly help the canola farmers, and that is a good thing. It is a temporary fix, however. I mean, we can't indefinitely subsidize agricultural production. This is a patch which is probably necessary given the expenditures that those farmers face in terms of tiding themselves over till new crops can be found in new markets. The idea of seeking new markets, be they in Korea, Japan, or elsewhere for canola is really important. I don't think, though, that there is a quick fix in that those two countries, for example, would be able to fill the huge gap, the 40% of Canadian canola production that's been blocked by China. So I think those are both good things. I certainly think they're good ideas, but it still doesn't solve our fundamental problem, which is the China market and the fact we're being excluded as punishment for the detention of Madame Meng.
And that's not the only sort of ramification for that detention. It's not just canola. There's Michael Spavor and Michael Cover, the two Canadians who've been detained. We know there are two Canadians now facing a death sentence, the possibility of a death sentence because of drug charges. Do you think there is there is more to come, and if so, what might that be?
Well, there's potentially more to come, and that does worry me because I fear that the Chinese may think that sufficient economic pressure would then lead us to somehow having the Prime Minister or the government phone the BC courts and have Ms. Meng freed. That cannot happen under our laws. So they can and may impose more pain upon us, but they should not have the illusion that that produces the result they desire. Some of the targets might include, for example, seafood products, other agricultural products. There's some hints that perhaps some other products will be affected, pork, legumes, peas. These may be other targets. There's other things China could do. Slow down the number of students that are coming here, cramp the number of tourists that are coming. They have a multitude of ways to hurt us without ever declaring formally that this is done in retaliation.
You said that they should not be under the illusion that what they do will result in, the Prime Minister picking up the phone and calling the courts in BC and saying, free Meng Wanzhou. How or is it possible to get that message across to them?
Well, I think it has to be repeated. Others that have been to Beijing, our embassy is doing it to be sure. Whenever I speak to Chinese interlocutors, I certainly do it, but I'm not in government. I think a passage needs to be repeated. But because their own courts are not fully independent from government and the party, they have a hard time accepting that someone at the level of Prime Minister can't simply call up a judge. For most Canadians, they understand that. It's simply not a doable thing. And once she was enmeshed in our court system, there's only a legal and procedural way out, which is either extradition or the U.S. drops the extradition request, or there is a last examination by the Minister of Justice to determine if the process was politicized. That's the only way out. And nothing that they can do can change that outcome. I think the path to solution lies through Washington, in fact.
And what do you mean by that?
What I mean is that the best hope, well, of course, if nothing is done, the U.S. maintains the extradition request. We go through long hearings that could last weeks, months, even years potentially. She's then extradited, which inevitably lead to another round of punishment from China. That would end it. I think things would gradually return to normal. But that could be a very long wait indeed. Far better if the Americans were to decide, as part of some broad deal, some other punishment for Huawei. If Huawei did indeed ship U.S. goods to Iran, there's been another case, ZTE, where the company was fined a humongous sum. Huawei wouldn't blink at that. It's the seizure of the daughter of the founder that has caused these particular problems.
So what would the ask be of Washington then specifically?
Well, they ask, and I think Ambassador McNaughton has already indicated he's done that, is make some deal with the Chinese as part of your broad trade strategy. He's been quite open about that, Ambassador McNaughton. I think that has the best prospects for solution, because as it is now, we've done something legally under a treaty to please the Americans. It's our duty. We'd expect them to do the same. But the punishment has all been visited upon us, not upon Washington. There aren't American detainees, apart from the ongoing trade spat that they have between Beijing and Washington. U.S. has slipped free of the consequences. We are the ones bearing the weight and the punishment.
Would it undermine at all the argument made often, not just from Canada, but the United States about the rule of law? And would it give the Chinese the impression that if they do ramp up the pressure in certain ways, that they're able to secure some kind of concession? In this case, it would be around trade.
I'm skeptical that any of the measures that have been proposed by various Canadians of punishing China in retaliation for the detentions will actually do the trick, i.e. lead to the release of our detainees. China has more ways to hurt us than we have ways to hurt them. The path to solving the problem, in my view, lies through Washington.
It sounds a lot like what former Ambassador McCallum was saying, actually, before he lost his job.
Well, he was, in my view, perhaps excessively frank. And I'm speaking as a former career professional, and I was rather shy when it came to the media. I've changed my view now that I no longer represent anything with the China Institute. But this is a problem which has deep roots in the U.S.-China relationship. It's not deeply rooted in the Canada-China relationship. We're hoisted by the extradition treaty, which we must honor because it's key to our own national security as well. We want our own criminals to be able to return and not to have to second guess every one of those decisions. But the circuit can be short-circuited by Washington reaching some other accommodation. And they can negotiate that with the Chinese, or if they insist, they can proceed with the extradition. But in the meantime, we won't get out from under this problem of the detainees and the other trade measures, in my opinion, until the Meng case has been resolved. China can be stubborn and patient, and they have no shortage of either.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time, Professor Holden. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Liz.
So what happens if this diplomatic dispute drags on? Marie-Claude Bibeau is the Minister of Agriculture, and she joins us now from the House of Commons foyer. Hi, Minister. Thanks for making time for us again this week. I appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
So this announcement is exactly what farmers had been asking for. It will certainly help them in the immediate future. What's your long-term plan?
Well, we are working on different fronts, so supporting better our farmers was one. With Minister Carr, we are also looking at diversifying our markets. And I mean, we keep engaging with the Chinese authorities to find a science-based solution. We really have to go to the bottom of this of the situation, because they're telling us that they have found some pests in our shipment. We still haven't seen any evidence, and we are pushing strongly to get to the bottom of it based on science, because I really have to stand for our Canadian high-quality canola and our very robust inspection system.
A few days ago when you were on the show, you said you had reached out to China, made the request to send a delegation to China to do exactly that, but you hadn't exactly received a response. Has that changed?
It hasn't changed yet, but the communication channel is still open. We are having conversation between the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and Customs China through video conferences.
Have you ever talked to your counterpart in China?
No, we only had an exchange of correspondences yet.
So what does it say that you are not able to even talk to your counterpart about this? I mean, those communication channels that you're talking about, they sound pretty negligible.
I mean, the important part of it is to have our scientists push the discussions and to find these evidence. If there are evidence, we would want to know and make the changes we need to know here in Canada. And if not, we have to reopen, our export, to reopen the market in China. And we also have our representative at the embassy, who is a very senior one, Mr. Nicol. He has also communication with his counterpart and I mean with the government over there. So we have different ways to communicate with the Chinese authorities.
Do you really believe this is about science?
We have to go to the bottom of this question, but we are acting on different fronts, and we have formed a working group. So we are, looking at the different options we have in front of us, the different tools we have with my counterparts, and I mean the prairie provinces, with the stakeholders, including the two companies who are directly impacted, with the representatives of the canola farmers as well. And we are really together trying to find the best solutions and the best, timing for the different options we have in front of us.
With respect, Minister, that doesn't answer the question. Do you, as Minister of Agriculture, believe that this dispute is about science?
I have to work based on evidence, and the only information I got, official information I got from China, is that they have found a pest, and this is what I'm working on first.
The evidence, though, is not just that they are blocking canola shipments. There are 2 Canadians facing drug charges now sentenced to death. There are 2 other Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spaver, who have been detained. Why does it appear that your government is hesitant to make the link between Meng Wanzhou's detainment and what's happened as a result?
Maybe we're not making direct links to them, but it is a very high priority for our government, for Prime Minister Trudeau and for Minister Freeland. We are very concerned with the security of these Canadians, and we are doing everything we can to advocate for them. And we have had a great number of countries who have already spoke out loud in support of Canada, in support of these Canadians.
You said off the top there that maybe you're not making the direct link. Why won't you make the direct link?
Because we believe that wouldn't be necessarily helpful. We want to deal with the different issues through the right channels.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Minister Bibeau. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.